So the story behind Hong Kong Lover is it's a love affair that I had with a beautiful Asian lady. Lily was actually her name, but she was the first one that I actually fell in love with, which ended up being a little bit of a unrequited love affair. The writing process for a song like Hong Kong Lover is the first thing you got to do is get down a drum beat, get that basic rhythm, you know. I mean, without the basic rhythm, that I don't believe any song exists. And the next thing that you would do is get down sort of like a bass line or something like that. I think in the case of Hong Kong Lover, it was those magical chords that you can hear in the background, those sort of haunting chords. The way I write lyrics in Hong Kong Lover and in all my songs, and I started off doing this with hip-hop music years and years ago when I was very first into hip-hop, and I was writing things like The Killing Clown and things like that, where I actually started writing and performing as the song was actually getting made. When I actually went to re-record Whitney's voice, we went to another studio, Black Pearl. That's where we put Whitney's voice down. My connection with the Insane Clown Posse is, but it's a connection that I've actually never met them. I've never actually spoken to them, but they most definitely have listened to my music and gleaned from my music their whole original idea of an insane clown. 2 or 3 years before the Insane Clown Posse, I used to write about lunatic asylums and lockups and straitjackets. Kole and the Captain, the radio show on 88.3 Southern FM. I started off, I suppose, Kole and the Captain by another character that I had called Pugnacious the Clown, who was a little bit like that too, but he was he was a little bit more vicious than the Captain. I started off with him, and it's basically Kole and the Captain. All it was a person talking to himself, and I used to argue with myself, you know. They were all pre-recorded, but I went on there one night and I'd lost the tape. I couldn't find it. So I thought, my God, what am I? And I just came back on and I said, "Oh, it's Kole and the Captain. Yeah, hello, Captain. How you doing? We're on here at 88.3, and I suppose you better tell us, Kole, what's the next song?" And it went on like that. And now, the way I record Kole and the Captain for comedy purposes and that is exactly how I done it that night on Southern FM. Flying Doctors. What a great show it was, you know. When I was 14, I was interested in women. I wanted a woman, and I thought, well, what better way to get a woman than to be on television, you know? And I thought, how am I going to do this? So I said, "Mum," I said, "put me in an acting agency. I want to get a job." So she put me in an acting agency, and about 3 months later, I got the job in Flying Doctors. But I remember how difficult it was because I couldn't read and write. It actually taught me how to read in a way. It actually taught me, I was forced into reading and had to read the script. And it was an actual pleasure. It was a pleasure to be working with all those wonderful people. What I remember about Flynn is very minimum, because at that point in my life I was in and out of mental institutions and lockups and things like that because I was being a very bad boy. I remember seeing a shot from Flynn where I was sitting on the stairs just out the front of a building there somewhere here in Victoria, and it just summed the whole thing up. It summed not the whole movie up, but it summed me up in general, that I was in a mess. I was actually in a mess right at that time. Drug-wise and mental state that I was in, and drugs. It was absolutely shocking what I'd done to myself. Acid is a thing that can really bugger your mind completely. You can go on one trip and never come back from it, you know. And I was sort of, at that time when I was doing Flynn, I was very lucky to have been given that opportunity to do that movie, and didn't do it to the best of my ability. I done it to the best of my ability at that time, but I was a lost soul right about then. I suppose what I've learnt from drugs is you can't get away with it. You can't get away with it forever, you know. There's, you know, in the very, very early stages, it seems like fun and great fun and everything. And I'm telling you, I was as big a drug addict as Jim Morrison. I'm not joking, you know. I was into gutter drugs and things like that eventually because I was with a girl. I won't go into it, but I didn't have much money left, you know, and I ended up getting into gutter drugs and things like that, which were drugs like petrol, glue, butane gas, you know, all these sort of things that just absolutely fry your mind. I remember having some butane gas and like that, having this butane gas, and my mate saying, "Can you hear them up there? They're frying. They're frying." I said, "What's frying?" He says, "The brain cells are. They're frying, mate." I said, "Yeah, I suppose so." And you know, it wasn't until years later that I realised, fuck, they were frying, all right. They were really frying, man. Drugs like petrol and things like that, just hideous drugs, and they're a catch-22 situation because you get a thing of petrol and you're having that, and then you take that away and you've got this instant headache. You've got an instant headache and you've got to have that petrol back. So how do you stop, you know? Some people are so bad and have been so bad, and I only out of desperation, probably because I ran out of petrol, but out of desperation, I used to say, no, that's it, man. I've got to stop. I've got to go through this headache, and you would have to go through the headache to actually stop your little petrol session, as we called it. Just gutter drugs like that, terrible gutter drugs, you know. And then I had all the speed and the heroin and the cocaine and you know, heroin, you know, I died 3 times in 3 months. You know, 3 months I was on it, 3 months, 3 times I died. And my friend who was getting it for me at the time, I remember the time I OD'd with him, and it was the first time I'd OD'd on heroin, and he came in, he had this deal, and I said, yeah, well, let's split it up, we'll have half each. He says, no, he says, you only want to have a quarter of this. You only really want to have a quarter of this. And I'm thinking, no, he's trying to rip me off, man. You know, he's trying to rip me off. I want all my drugs, man. I'm going to have all my drugs. And I said to him, I said, no. I said, look, I want the whole lot. He says, no, I'm telling you, you will die if you have this. Your tolerance is not good enough. You could drop. I said, no, I'm not going to drop. You've seen how good I am. I had no tolerance at all anyway. But I said, you know how good I am. I'm all right. He says, you're not really that good. I said, right, well, I'm going to have the half anyway, right? So anyway, he cuts up this thing, and we boil it up in the spoon and inject it, you know. And I stood up and I put my arm up in the air to let the blood flow through. And I said, mate, I said, if this is the rush, I'm going to be fucking dead in a minute. And I fell over on the ground and died, just literally dead like that, and had to be revived. And this will give you an idea of what sort of drug addict I am. I was in the same category as someone like Morrison when it comes to drugs. I got the Narcan. Now, a lot of people say that the Narcan doesn't make you feel good. You don't feel good after the Narcan. I felt on top of the world the next day. So much so that I said, right, I'm going to head out and get some more of this smack. That exact day that I'd done that, just after dying, you know. So that's what it proves, that you know, drugs, and what I've learnt from drugs is they're killers, and they will indeed kill you. I started painting about I don't know, it must have been about 9 years ago now, and I remember actually seeing Pollock, the movie Pollock, which I looked at and I thought, my God, look at these paintings, aren't they terrific? And I looked at it and I thought, I had a crook hand at that time. I'd had it cut open in a knife fight, and I looked at Pollock and I thought, man, you are so mad. You're such a madman. But that painting, I can see how you do that. I can see how you do that. I understand how you do that. So I started going out into the shed. I think I'd done it. I think my original painting, what I originally wanted to do, was a sort of collage of things that I'd got out of a computer magazine, like characters and things like that I stuck together on this board, this one board that I had there. And I started this up and I put this collage there, and it didn't really look what I wanted it to look. And I thought, what about that Pollock? You know, he just sort of does a bit of this with the paint. It's got to be right, but I'll have a go at it. So I started with this collage and I started painting over the top of it. And then I thought, no bugger that, this is looking good. I'll paint over this whole collage. I'll get rid of all this stuff that I was going to do. So I painted right over the top of it, and I made my first painting, a lovely bloke called Mark McCormick, he got my first original painting, and he still has it today, which was called Lunar Surface. It was sort of like a landscape of the moon in a Pollock style. Hey Doc, there's a tilt and you killed. I was working as an ASM in that. In the early days, always wanted to be a stuntman and things like that, and behind the scenes, and quite enjoyed my time spent at Heidelberg Civic Centre over there with my mum, Joan Brockenshire, and my father, Tommy Dysart, with their production of Hey Doc, There's a Tilt and You Killed. I suppose I got a little bit of a taste for actually coming out on stage. I think I'd done it a long time ago. I had actually as a drat for Frank Howson's production of Boy Who Dared to Dream, which Frank actually wrote. And I still love that. I still love that play, Boy Who Dared to Dream, to this very day. It's a magical, magical play. That was the first touch I got of the stage, and the second touch I got of the stage was in Hey Doc, There's a Tilt and You Killed, where I actually came out as a paper boy. It was a pretty small role, but it was good. It got me like out there and in front of an audience, which was different to me. I've always been a little bit of a hermit, you know, in my personality. I don't really have, and I think we all do, I think everyone in show business is really like that they don't really have the personality that you would say is the right personality to be doing the job. They're a little bit insular, you know, which is myself. And I think I actually came out on MTC, on stage in the MTC, just as a one-night thing with my father, and that really shocked me because I'd never seen that many people in an audience before staring at me, you know, and it's a frightening experience sometimes, you know, an enlightening experience, but a frightening experience. My original experience with show business was when I was very young. In fact, so young I was still in my mum's tummy in a stage show called The Spring Heel Terror, where my mum was actually doing a ballet dance at the time, the marvellous Joan Brockenshire. Well, the original Rocky Horror Show, as I remember it, was with my mum and dad, also a marvellous actor called Max Phipps, who played Frankenfurter, and I believe he was without a doubt the best Frankenfurter that I've ever seen. I think I was about 3 years old when I done a guest appearance. I remember being out there on the stage and the lights. The first time I'd seen the lights in my eyes, you know, just absolutely blinding. I don't know if you don't know what it's like to be in a spotlight. It is, you can't see the audience, you can't see anything. All you can see is white light. That's all you can see from a stage. And I think it frightened the hell out of me, to tell you the truth, my little appearance in the Rocky Horror Show. Working with Whitney was an absolute dream. You couldn't have a more stunning person, personality, and charming girl than Whitney. But I will say, when I first met Whitney, she was so quiet that I thought, how's Frank gonna get anything out of this girl? I mean, I know she's stunning. She looks stunning to look at, but you've got to be more than stunning. You've got to be able to turn it on and off for the camera. And when she was in front of the camera, she was absolutely perfect. She was a natural, an absolute natural. I can't say anything more about Whitney except that I am looking forward to working with her again, and she is an absolute natural and a dreamboat.